the lawyer.
I'm sorry John has left because it's only a court which would examine the question, was it obtained by fraud, and no court will ever do that. But you know, Mukasey himself, the Republican Attorney General after Gonzalez, said we ought to get a re-vote. I think it was on the Iraq authorization. But what's happened is that Congress votes the money. And by and large, the courts accept these appropriations, given in the circumstances I mentioned, as sufficient. It's not the same as a declaration of war. And indeed, in the preamble, I think, to the War Powers Act, it says that. It says you've got to either have a declaration of war or a statutory authorization which is unambiguous, some language to that effect. In other words, that a mere appropriation which votes the money for an existing war is not sufficient. I could spend a lot more time on it, and I won't. I'm just leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's take two more questions, and then we'll be done. Yes.
Precisely who would you declare war on?
Okay, one more question. Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I wish the other gentleman was still here too.
Yeah.
So,
I'll take his part.
all three of you. You know, you cited that the problem is Congress, and Professor Wallace cited that the problem is the people, and he cited that the problem is the courts. And obviously this is a multilateral issue, so you have to look at all of these different things together. But my question is that if you say that the malleability of the Constitution and its usage and definition as we apply law is contingent on Congress and the will of the people, and yet our people are the problem, and the media and whatnot has what I like to consider a war on our attention spans. Do you think that there's going to be more and more problems that come in conflict with the Constitution, and yet we're still going to say, oh, it's Congress? It's Congress's fault. That's how the beast runs, and that's how it's going to go.
And I know this first question I really want to answer, but I'm so old I already forgot it. What was your question, sir? Who did you declare war on? In this document and in the bill that pretty much is based on it by Mr. Jones, I mean, I think it's, and as we understand, we non-lawyers understand the mood on the Hill, not the constitutional niceties. If Congress bellies up to the bar, like it did before the first Gulf War in 1991, the vote in February, I think, or bellies up to the bar before the other Gulf War recently, even though if you read that thing very carefully, it's tenuous as to exactly what they're authorizing. And Hillary Clinton still thinks she didn't authorize war. She just authorized Bush to threaten, whatever. There's a feeling that if you belly up to the bar and make a statement that a military action against anybody, it can be against individuals, it can be for a certain purpose, individuals might get in the way, you can say Congress has expressed itself pretty much in favor of an attack. So you could sort of go after Al-Qaeda. Now on this other question of the Congress and being unable to respond to public pressure?
No, in using a response to public pressure as a guise to justify their actions when they're in direct conflict with the Constitution.
I mean, I hate to say it, but thank goodness the Constitution changes all the time, depending on what 5 justices think. That's the reality, because that's what the law is. Then, as Justice Marshall says, that's what the law is. So suddenly they decide in Plessy versus Ferguson one thing, and in Brown versus Board of Education they decide something else with the same Constitution that was there. The same thing happened recently on gun rights. When I started working on anti-arms exports work in the 80s, we had allies in the anti-gun community, the gun control community. Nobody at that time felt that any court had ever said that you have a right to have a handgun for self-protection in your home. This was all about militias, remember? Well, the Supreme Court recently changed its mind. I mean, things change all the time. Congress will respond to that, and that will give the overall penumbra of where they act. But they mostly respond to the mood of citizens' campaigns that threaten their reelection. When Mitch McConnell made the crucial vote, the Republican who's now the minority leader, in 1986 to override Ronald Reagan and pass the Anti-Apartheid Sanctions Act, he said, I still don't agree with this. I still don't agree with this. I think we should not put sanctions on South Africa. It's a terrible idea. It'll hurt all the black people. who are, of course, in the streets demanding sanctions. But I said, I can't go to the football games at University of Kentucky anymore, because all the kids in their shanty towns are making it impossible for me to get into the game. You know, the citizen pressure is what convinced him to come over. And, you know, I must say, having met Nelson Mandela and him telling me if it wasn't for those crazy students, I'd still be in jail, I think that's pretty important. That's how Congress moves, in a very big way, responding to citizen pressure.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
You know, I'm not really an anti-war activist, so Rossiter really has to say a lot to get me up here. First of all, his father's books impressed me a lot. Secondly, we do believe in the rule of law, and Justin, you should come to law school. And you use the expression constitutional niceties. God help us. If all we have is constitutional niceties. No, of course, the fact that the Constitution is somewhat in abeyance doesn't mean we shouldn't restore it. Of course we should. And as far as the people, well, I won't go to the people, I mentioned that before. The technical question, who do we declare war on? Students have written papers for me that, can we declare war on a non-state? My answer is why not? Why not? I think there's nothing in the history which says we cannot. You may remember that one of the early exercise of power was against the Barbary pirates. You remember Jefferson said, I want congressional authorization, not a declaration, but authorization to sort of take offensive action. And that, admittedly, it was the Bay of Tunis and the Bay of Algiers, but they were sort of pirates. They were not unlike the jihadists. So that doesn't really worry me. But I think one thing is interesting from listening to Mr. Rossiter, I've not met before. He's obviously going to be a little bit ad hominem. You know, sophistication is one thing. You know, Herman Kahn was a real wise guy, wrote a book called Thinking the Unthinkable, We Could Use Nuclear Weapons. He said, we become so sophisticated at distinguishing shades of gray, we can no longer tell black from white. The country lacks fervor, it lacks passion, it lacks knowledge, it lacks education. We are so goddamn ignorant about our own system, which actually, I think it's a wonderful system. It's given us more wealth, more leisure, more comfort than any society in human history. But it's pathetic. The individualism, the egotism has just run riot. And we've really got to do something about it. It's not going to happen through Benson Scotch lobbying committees, don't misunderstand me. But it might happen if we keep on educating people right. You know, I'm a great fan of Obama, quite frankly. I think people are very unfair to him. On Afghanistan, he inherited 8 years of an incompetently run war. It has an inertia, it has commitments, it has expectations. I don't think he's going to go through with giving McChrystal the 40,000. I don't think he knows what to do, but that's another issue. And he's working within this system, in which you are all in. Even David is going to go marching down and depend on the relative civility of the American cops. It's like Gandhi. People say Gandhi was able to succeed in Britain, in India, because the British were gentlemen. The irony of ironies. You guys just keep on marching, keep on walking. Don't eat too much. Everyone eats too much.
But we don't have gentlemen in charge.
I was thinking we would end here, but we can't end on that note. Yes,
This question was really meant for John Bonifaz, but since Professor Wallace was right up there and alluded to Obama, where is the authorization justifying the drone attacks in Pakistan?
I wonder.
Excuse me?
I say I wonder.
You wonder. I mean, but that's a legitimate question. Should that be something that somebody brings a suit against?
All gotten out of hand. I mean, Bill Clinton, as someone pointed out, was relatively lawless. I mean, Conrad Copper, his legal advisor, basically, I mean, the system has... Okay.
Thank you. It's a valuation of your time and your contributions.
Beyond my Republican roots.
There we go. In Wisconsin, we value
on the other hand, if you go down to the Cato Institute, which I do, which is libertarian, they oppose war. Bob Levy, who is the chairman of the Cato Institute, admittedly he funded the Second Amendment case here, but he also represented guys from Guantanamo. The right does not believe in this unlimited executive. It's gotten out of control, clearly. The predators, the use of force everywhere without going back to Congress. And we've heard, Mickey Edwards, who's the co-chairman of this operation, says that Congress is basically abdicating. We've heard many reasons why, but that's not satisfactory. The public should not accept that, goddammit. You know, that's one of the things we pay our taxes for, is for these people to function effectively. And I don't think that there are many of them who are quite able, by the way. They're not very well led. Look at the congressional leadership. I mean, it's pathetic, really. I wouldn't tell you it's the best, because I say, look at the congressional leadership. It is pathetic, is what I say.
Geez, do I get a chance to defend Nancy Pelosi?
That's okay.
Are you kidding?
Okay, we're basically out of time here. Thank you all very much, and let's give a hand to our panel.